Well, hello, this is Dr. Scott Weinford. I'm a member of the Global Educators Network at Stanford, GEN, and I'm here today with Professor Elizabeth Carroll, who was one of our presenters talking about globalizing libraries in our September Inquiry Meetup. And I've been re-interviewing each of the three participants in that Inquiry Meetup because, to be honest, it was mind-expanding, mind-blowing, and I want to know more. I'm also a 32-year veteran of full-time teaching in community colleges, and I know, as most of you do, as community college educators, that the libraries are the beating heart of any vibrant and functioning campus. So I cannot wait to introduce you to Dr. Carroll. So Dr. Liz Carroll is a senior lecturer in art history and visual culture at San Jose State University. She's a co-author of Environmental Equity for Students in the Library and Lead Buildings, which is published in Practicing Social Justice in Libraries 2022 Routledge, very prestigious publisher, as we all know. And by the way, Liz, I did really enjoy reading the article. So did my homework, and it's one reason I was insisting on interviewing you. She's committed to influencing and evangelizing everyday design art history to young designers and students alike. Her enthusiasm for Italian art led her to work opportunities in Italy and the US. She teaches art history for programs in Italy and the US and worked in the A&D community furniture design industry. Her research teaching interests in design history emerged from her research on the early modern Italian interior. So Liz, welcome to the GEN YouTube channel.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Well, the first question I always love asking my guests is, how is it that you came to be involved in community college teaching, in university teaching? Were you one of those children that woke up at 5 years old and announced that you would be a professor of Italian interior design? Or did that come to you in other ways?
Oh, it definitely came to me in other ways. Yeah. I mean, circuitous in a way. I mean, I began studying music, which then led to art history, interestingly, but it was via the Italian channel, having loved Italian music.
Wow.
And so it really led to a lifetime labor of love in studying the art and design of Italy. And yeah, I mean, I think I went on to pursue different opportunities. I was an intern at the Peggy Guggenheim Museum in Venice, and that led to even further, deeper interests in Venice. Led to the early part of my teaching career actually was spent in Italy. And then when I came back to the US, some of my first teaching jobs were at community colleges.
Do you want to drop some names for our community college?
I could drop some names like Foothill College for one, which I've really enjoyed teaching those students. It has made me the instructor I am today.
Oh, well, that's wonderful to know. And as a community college instructor myself, I know that that's genuine and sincere. It's often astounding, the quality and the variety and the depth and the perspectives of our students are continuously astonishing. In my long career, I've never gotten over it, and I've never gotten tired of it, and I'm surprised every single quarter. All right, well, what we had proposed was that we go back through your slide presentation that you gave at the Inquiry Meetup as a way to kind of reintroduce your perspectives on libraries. I know that you were working with a librarian, Peggy. Let's go ahead and screen share your slides here, and I'll let you take it from here in terms of what you want to say. I see we're talking about the MLK Library.
That's right on the campus of San Jose State University. It's a special type of library. It's actually half public library for the city of San Jose and half university library. I had wanted to do for a long time was to have a project-based activity for my students in a general, a GE art history course, but also be able to teach sustainability through art history. And so sort of broadly, from this perspective, I teach a course. I teach at least between 2, sometimes 3 sections a semester of a course called Design and Society. And it's an exploration of everyday design across, a global, context, in a global context. And so what we decided to do, with the help of my colleague, Peggy Cabrera, associate librarian at San Jose State MLK Library, was with her sustainability module, which she had written, I was able to create an assignment that would require students to explore the physical and also virtual space of campus, because we also did this during the pandemic, to really try and understand, wanted to frame the space of the library, as a place as having the power to bring people together. Of course, this alternates, right, in a virtual context and then in person. But even more so, that has become apparent in the 21st century, is that the library and the campus library holds the position as a communal forum to practice social justice through the lens of spatial design, and also thinking about how functions shift. So into the 21st century, the physical library collection expansion, of course, is no longer the objective. And consequently, the library structure becomes less about storage for books, right? And more about interior spaces that are designed for the end user or students. But that being said, of course, this library serves a couple of different populations, right? It's not just students. So this is where my co-presenter, co-author, Peggy Cabrera, and myself have found the opportunity to teach students about sustainability on campus, and more specifically, green or LEED, LEED, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, at San Jose State. And so I created an assignment as a part of this course, Art 72, which is called Design and Society. And so by creating this project-based assignment and hands-on classroom experience there, I was able to create more of a global lens in which students can learn about what influences their education and the buildings that they spend, probably 90% or more of their time in each day. So we were able to create this global lens on sustainability and all that encompasses it in the module that my co-author has written.
As I mentioned in the Inquiry Meetup, 2 of my most passionate concerns are sustainability and creating community. So it did strike me as something that I knew in my bones, but hadn't heard articulated as completely, that the role of libraries has shifted in the 21st century. It is, as you say, no longer just a case of expanding research, expanding the collection, but the buildings, the function of the buildings themselves has really changed, as well as the emphasis on sustainability. So I think you bring together 2 passions of mine that I find to be absolutely fundamental. So we have some things to learn using the space of the library itself as a teaching tool. The buildings on our campus are our most expensive and enduring form of educational technology in many ways. And I love the fact that you're leading students to see through that lens in a new way.
Also, by the way, I am sharing student work as we speak. And so I took some examples from different PowerPoints, and then eventually I have students creating podcasts now. But the idea is that with this assignment, where I'm asking them to observe spatial design, but also look through the social equity lens, which is a part of LEAD, it prompts how we can interpret and deepen the discussion of the campus library as the nexus for social equity and inclusion through the sustainability lens. And so this slide shows Effectively, at left, we're looking at the affected groups, the stakeholders in the student union, as well as MLK library. And so what happened was the US Green Building Council added a new pilot credit to the LEED rating system in 2018, and they entitled it Social Equity in the Community. And so it really does suggest a deeper commitment to social responsibility. And so how can we as students and faculty better understand the social impacts of LEED on campus? So campus libraries, but also we include now the student union and the continuing, actually, emergence of green buildings at San Jose State. But of course, we can extend that to, community college campuses like Foothill and others. So the objective is to continue using the sustainability module and focus the investigation to social justice as experienced through green building design. The assignment really requires students to think about this for at least 3 weeks as we move through buildings and then the assignment itself.
I'm really excited to be reminded that it was the first time I heard about it when you mentioned it, that this new criteria, this new social justice, environmental justice criteria has been added to LEED. And I think that kind of updating is both overdue and inspiring to me that this has finally happened. And I'll add that as a teacher, I spend a great deal of my time as an educator working on climate justice and environmental justice issues. And if you don't include a social justice component, if you don't focus on local impacts on local communities, the default setting in many students' heads is that this is just the kind of issue that only some old white guy with no hair would ever worry about. And of course, it's exactly the opposite, right? So I love that LEED now explicitly includes this criteria and that you chose to highlight it. Not only because it's important to making the building effective, but it's important to making the teaching effective.
And what a better place than to, exhibit it than on a college campus. I mean, certainly we know that places like Google, Apple have LEED platinum buildings, but they're very much closed off to the public for various reasons. But here, it becomes a part of what originally the CSU chancellor had proposed was to use the campus as like a learning living lab. And that's where this was all born, and through environmental studies. One of the initiatives back in 2014 was that environmental justice and sustainability doesn't just need to be taught in environmental studies. It needs to be taught, incorporated, integrated across the board. And so, yes, you can teach this in an art history class, or you can teach it in an English class or creative writing. It's really that vital.
I feel like sending the former chancellor a thank you note for Living Learning Laboratory. That is a wonderful phrase. And that's exactly what I believe libraries have become, can become, and that's one reason we're having this discussion.
Okay, so how do we do it? We ask students to interpret how users experience social equity at King Library as defined by LEED. So you can see there are a number of ideas here, both in image and in text, as to what that amounts to. So we ask students to, number one, take a self-guided tour, to engage in group discussion because they're deployed in groups throughout the library when we have our class there on site. Achieve that in this first sort of low stakes activity. And so the initial investigation of resources at King through the social equity lens serves as a foundation for the development of the student work. The idea is that first they gather the observations at King Library, and then they will compare to another LEED certified building on campus, right? Such as the Student Union. We selected 6 LEED credit categories, and those are energy and atmosphere, water efficiency, materials and resources, indoor environmental quality, sustainable sites, and location and transportation. So each group are trying to analyze, observe how these different areas like water efficiency or indoor environmental quality are being experienced.
Yeah, and it occurs to me again with my teacher hat on that although LEED was created as criteria for builders and architects, it is a fantastic, it gives a fantastic structure for teaching as well. So I mean, you're giving students a structure and a lenses through which to understand what it is they're being asked to do. You're sending them directly into the physical environment so that they can really see and listen and feel for themselves, even breathe in. What is the air quality? What is the feel, the heart feel? Like, how does the space make you feel? Is it a living, breathing building spiritually and physically? So I'm again really impressed with the idea of using LEED as a teaching structure as well as a building structure.
The question is, how does the designed amenity foster inclusivity?
Mm,
Is a question, how can it be improved? Who is being served? And exactly what you're saying. So thinking about the heating, the cooling, what is the temperature? What the ventilation, the lighting? What is the lighting source? Passive solar design, or is it electric lighting? Or what is the noise level? What about the acoustical design?
mm,
And how are we affected by that? And again, who is being served?
mm.
So it leads to the question, how can we draw more attention to this form of social justice at the institutional level? So through, again, on-site observations, I encourage students to make interviews, maybe with students there using the library or the student union. It could be library staff, really anyone, even facilities. Students have gone to facilities directly and talked to staff there. So through class readings and independent research, of course, students accumulate data to analyze.
Well, and you're giving students a lot of agency with this too. Like you're giving them a structure, but within that structure, as you're emphasizing, they have there's a number of ways that they can go, that they can focus their own interest, that they can investigate literally and use their critical thinking skills. And so you develop that skill set as well, which I think is really fantastic. And that, of course, can be applied to any building and any community and anywhere else. So it really is a completely transferable skill set with a beautiful test case to contain it.
It's also not without its challenges. So, during the pandemic, started this right before, it's like, oh, so we can't do this in person now. We need to find a workaround. So, sort of a classic Silicon Valley problem. In the early stages of the pandemic, we had to create a lot of, visual apparatus resources for them so they could make some observations without physically entering the building.
Yes.
Which was really difficult and challenging. And so here's again another student slide. We also asked them to imagine what would equity look like when we officially would return to campus. I just started last spring assigning a podcast, and they would create it as a group. This semester, they're going to be doing it on their own, and I've just introduced it.
I am inspired by the podcast assignment.
Well, this is also about introducing sustainability aesthetics, because especially in a design history context or art history context, we're often looking at formal qualities of what makes a design a success. And particularly in the history, we're talking a lot about aesthetics and the visual components. When there's design, of course, function is always introduced, which is a little bit different than with art itself. It's introducing a new paradigm with sustainability aesthetics. What makes this building beautiful or a success is directly tied to its relationship with nature.
Wow.
So when we look at its connection to natural light and its psychological well-being, the effects, the positive effects on the viewer, that leads to it being a successful example of design simply because of its connection to nature. Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for joining us on the GEN YouTube Educators channel.